I was regarded at Harvard Business School as being a communist.
A brief is setting out your ambition. The brief from the Pope was make them believe.
This one is a bit of a mystery still, when my first tweet is going to happen.
It takes the same amount of energy to try and do something great as it does to justify something average.
If I was a CMO and I'd give them a 3-word brief, make us famous.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 21 of the WFA's Better Marketing Podcast. Forgive this very strange look. I'm sitting in a hotel room in Albania at the end of a fantastic cycling tour, grabbing the opportunity to talk to a fantastic guest, and this is the only time we could get him. So, Roel de Vries, who many of you will know from his time as CMO at Nissan and council member of the WFA and great friend to the WFA, is now the Group Chief Operating Officer of the City Football Group. In 2018, in Tokyo for the WFA conference, you were the CMO at Nissan, you were running the Innovation Center, and you were having the time of your life with your family, it appeared to me, in Tokyo. And here we are, 4 years later, all sorts of things have changed, but now you're in Manchester. So, Roel, over to you. Tell us what happened. Tell us what you're up to.
Yeah, quite a difference that from Tokyo to Manchester. But I spent 11 years in Japan, so I lived a long time in Japan. I spent 26 years with Nissan, so had an amazing time and enjoyed every minute of it. The last 10 years as the CMO at Nissan, so enjoyed it. But it was time to get back to Europe, to give the family and myself a chance to live in Europe, because by that time I was more than 20 years out of Europe, so wanted to go back, and then this opportunity came along, and you know how these things go, the right opportunity at the right time, and here I am in Manchester in a very different world than where I was before.
It certainly is, and tell us a little bit about your role at the City Football Group. I mean, most people will immediately know that that's something to do with Manchester City, but they probably don't know much about City Football Group, and they certainly won't know what it means to be the Group Chief Operating Officer. So I'd love to hear about that.
Yeah, so let me talk a bit about City Football Group, because you're right, everybody would probably know Manchester City, the main team in Manchester, but we actually have a group of football clubs, and there's in total 13 football clubs that we have in our group. Different type of relationships, some we fully own, some we partly own, and some we have a partnership with, but 13 football clubs. And that's quite unique maybe in sports, but it's not that unique in business, correct? In many multinational companies you have multiple countries or multiple businesses all over the world, and it works for those companies. So in sports it's a bit unusual, but it's not that different. So what really appealed to me in joining City Football Group is this idea that we create something in sports that in other parts of business is already there, where there is a high level of expertise, high level of knowledge of the business that you're in or the industry that you're in, and you use that knowledge to work with many clubs all over the world to make them better. And on that principle, I think we can perform better in many local operations than maybe some other clubs can, who only have one club and they need to build up all of their expertise in one place. So City Football Group asked me to come because the group was getting bigger. Originally it was one football club, then it became 2 and 3, first starting with Melbourne and New York, and it was expanding, and they were looking for somebody who understands the business world and the world of operating in a multinational, and at the same time had an affinity with sports, with sponsorship, with business, and I thought it was just an amazing opportunity. I knew City Football Group because when I was at Nissan, one of those clubs, which are now in the group, is a club owned by Nissan. So I worked together with City Football Group and always loved working with them. So when the opportunity came, I took it.
And how big a shift has it been for you? I mean, obviously there's the personal one, but I guess the business culture must be entirely different. The Japanese culture to a football club sounds like a massive leap.
Yeah, it is different, and You know, the interesting part is many things are different. Obviously, Japan compared to Manchester, sports compared to automotive business. So there's some obvious big differences. But there's actually also a lot in common. At Nissan, we had a lot of passionate people, passionate about cars, passionate about the customers of those cars all over the world. And here at City, people are really passionate about the sports and about the fans. And yes, the product is different. And yes, what we actually do every day is different. But at the core, there's a lot of similarities, a lot of engaged, passionate people trying to do the best and trying to innovate within their field. And even in Nissan, what I enjoyed there, which is the same here, is this multicultural, international type of setup. Because I don't believe that there is one answer or one type of culture or one way of working that is the best. I think the best is to have a combination of the way people in Japan or people in Indonesia, people in Brazil, in North America or in Europe approach things in business, and you combine that. I think you get the best result. And that we have also at City Football Group. That's one of the advantages of being the group. We have people from all nationalities, from all over the world. So in that sense, it's a different environment, but it's not necessarily such a different culture, which I enjoy.
And is there the same kind of collaboration on the pitch? So I understand the business side of this, but it never really occurred to me that maybe Man City are loaning players to New York City. I don't think they do, by the way, but how does that work? And how do you cooperate with the football side of the business?
Yeah, so obviously all the football clubs, the football side is a key part of the business. Although I don't neither do the CEOs get too much in the technical aspect about using this player or that player. But obviously when we talk about what are the budgets that we are using, or what is the structure, the setup around football in terms of the organization around it, or discussions about the type of football we want to play, not the type in terms of technical sense, but the type that fits with the DNA and the brands of the clubs that we want to be. There we and all the people I work with, we are very involved and a lot of discussion. But obviously there's full respect for the experts. But then again, at Nissan I was very involved in which type of car should go to which type of market, but I wouldn't dare to tell an engineer how to develop autonomous driving cars, correct? So you have the experts and they have their responsibility and they do a great job. And the same is at City. So we're close to football, everybody knows everybody. The coaches, the players and people in management, I think we all know each other quite well, respect each other, but everybody has their own expertise and the areas that they focus on. Your comment about the international aspects of the football, that is very similar, and it's one of the appealing parts, especially for young players, because a very big part of football is the development of players from a very young age. We have many players coming to our clubs, and Manchester's a good example from before 12 years old, and then we have teams before 12 or under 14, under 16, and that we have in many of these clubs all over the world. And for them, obviously, the fact that there is a path to the top in football in various places, because we're in the top division in Japan, the top division in France, the top division in Spain, of course, the top division in the UK, top division in the US. There are paths for players if they perform well and if they have the talent and the ambition to grow in football. There is a path from players through all of our clubs, and that's very appealing. And the other thing is appealing, they can play with coaches that have either played themselves or have operated in many clubs. They can work with nutritionists that have been working at called the Centre of Manchester, know everything about nutrition or about all other aspects of personal development. So this international aspect is very important to us, but I also think to our players in the football side.
And what about the value of the Premiership? I mean, I'm reminded, of course, wherever you travel in the world, you will always see a TV screen with the Premier League on it. And in fact, I saw Man City win the championship in my Barclays days when it was the Barclays Premiership still, Barclays Premier League. Um, how does that drive the commercial wheels? Because it's a phenomenal business and presumably excellent for Man City as well. And how does that relate with the lesser leagues? And are you trying to help them learn from the Premiership experience? I think that was about 6 questions in one.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, all valid questions. So first of all the football clubs we have in the group are not the same. Of course, they play in different leagues in different situations. Also, to some extent, have a different objective. So, for example, we're in China, we're in India, and obviously those are developing football countries with what we believe is a very bright, big future opportunity. But it's a very different objective for us than Manchester City, which is in a very established environment and very big. So if you look at it from a business point of view, let's say revenue or number of fans, you have, of course, Manchester City being the biggest by far. I mean, that is the majority of our business, and our revenue is Manchester City. And then after Manchester City, you get to New York City in the MLS in the US, and then to Troyes and Girona, who play in the top divisions in France and Spain. So those are big, call it revenue clubs. But Manchester City still, even amongst those, is by far the biggest. And the beautiful part of the Premier League, in my view, is that it is truly global. You have two very global platforms in football. One is the Champions League, which I think everybody in the world will, well, everybody's a big word, but almost everybody would have watched at some point in time or heard about it. And the other one is the Premier League, and we're lucky with Manchester City that we have a chance to play in both and do well in both. So our focus with Manchester City very much is around the global fan, global and the local fan, but the global fan, we growing at the moment actually very fast. We are not one of the established clubs. I think many people would be my age and older would, of course, know the clubs from 20, 30 years ago. And Manchester City wasn't as big then as it is now. So we are almost in that world the new kids on the block, the brand that's trying to innovate, that's trying to grow, and doing very well. We growing very fast. We have a fast young fan base, fast growing young fan base, which is interesting in football because in football when you're a fan, you become a fan when you're young, and most people will stay a fan of that club for the rest of their lives. So for us, really the focus is around new fans all over the world, young fans all over the world, and therefore our focus is very global. Now, while we do this, and that I enjoy about football, we are still Manchester City, and we are still part of the city of Manchester, and we have a very big role to play in Manchester. We have a big responsibility in Manchester. So we try to create this very interesting balance of always staying authentic, always stay real, always stay true to what Manchester City has been about for 100 years, because the club is over 100 years old, and stay true to that, and at the same time grow this international fan base, because a football club belongs to the fans. It doesn't belong to the owners or to the management at the time, because we are there for a period of that football club. So it belongs to the fans, and therefore you need to be very respectful, and especially all these fans that come 20 times a year, every week, twice a week to the Etihad Stadium in Manchester. The experience they get and the product they get and the way they are treated needs to be based on what we've done for the last 100 years. And then the other part which I like about sports, and we do this in all of our clubs, is because we have such an important role to play in the community that we are part of. All of our social responsibility activities are at the core of everything that we do. So whether it's in Manchester or in Troyes in France or in New York, wherever we go, a very big part of our activity is around doing good for the community that we serve, and that's exciting. I find it very exciting that you can have real impact on real lives, and we as of course, as a business we contribute, but our players contribute, our staff contribute, and our coaches contribute. So it's a nice world. So it's a long answer to your many questions, David. Most of them.
Two different aspects of building the fan base. I guess from a marketing perspective, I'm really interested in what you do. But the secondary question is, of course, in the end, there's nothing quite like winning. And the trophy that's eluded your wonderful coach in Man City so far, I think you're well on the way to this year, which is, of course, the Champions League. But how do you leverage the kind of marketing skills to build the fan base? And how much does performance on the pitch drive the growth of the fan base?
Yeah, they're of course closely related, but you need to do both, and that for me is important. And again, it's not so different to many other industries. If you have the best product, it doesn't mean that you will have the best brand. And if you have the best brand with a bad product, then the brand won't last. And we've seen this, correct? We've had top brands in the world that were dominating their industry, and I won't mention examples, but I think we can all come up with brands that were really big when we were younger, and they didn't make it, and they sort of lost track because they were either not innovating or they had quality problems. But we also had many companies with the best product and the brand just didn't make it. And the same is here. If we play the best football and we win all of the trophies, then that of course is a fantastic base to work from. But that's what it is. It's a base to work from. You still need to do your brand building exercise. And in our case, that's now focused on Man City because it's the easiest example, but applies to all of our clubs. So we need to make sure that we connect the brand essence and the product, the football, and we communicate that to the world. So very important is the type of football. So if you look at the way Pep plays football, it's always very innovative. It's all about positive attitude, a lot of possession, a lot of forward play type of concept. So we do the same on the brand. We want to be innovative. We want to always challenge. We want to be young. We want to be exciting. And how do we do this in marketing? It's basically about content. And if you look at our industry, people quite often ask me what the business is that we are in. And the obvious answer would be, say, well, your business is football. But and of course, we are in football. But what the actual business side is, it's not necessarily football. It is, we are a very big content and entertainment business at its core. So what we do is we create content that engages lots of our fans out there, and that's the brand that we need to build. So a lot of the investments that we do in City, other than the football side, is around content and creativity, because the more we can engage with people out there, the closer we can keep to them, and the more fans that we can connect to ourselves, the more valuable this club will be to our partners and our sponsors and the audience. Because the revenue we make of course revenue out of the stadium, which is one part of the revenue, and in the Premier League, very lucky, those games are normally sold out, quite often sold out. There's still lots of opportunity there in terms of the type of experiences that we offer to people, but quite often sold out. The second part is broadcasting, and the third part is content generation and partnership sponsorships that will join us. But there's this broadcasting element and this partnership element. Basically, all the brands that will put the money behind us, what they are buying is access to our fans, to be part of the community that we've built all over this world. So in the marketing side, my biggest job is to build a bigger global community around our clubs, and then a more and more engaged community around our clubs. And if we are successful, then we will attract more partners that want to be with us on this journey.
Well, one of the things you and I as marketeers share in common is absolutely unswerving belief in the power of sponsorship. And at Nissan, of course, you did many a deal. What's it like to be on the other side of the table? And how, obviously, you can probably read the minds of the marketeers you're talking to. But talk to us about that. That must be fascinating.
Yeah, it is fascinating, and and of course you learn when you're you learn a lot when you're on either side. What I learned so first you said, what is the value if I sit on the other side of the table? I think that the biggest value is that I know very well what effort it took me to convince the people on the Nissan side at the time to do a certain sponsorship. And I was always convinced, and I'm still very convinced, that sponsorship is a great part of your marketing portfolio. But obviously, when you do sponsorships, and some of them are quite expensive, like we did Champions League, or even many of our partners at Manchester City, or many of our clubs, they're significant investments. And the way to convince your colleagues inside the company, or the way to convince the CMO, is something that I hope I can teach some of the people on this side, because quite often we focus on the creative side of things and the excitement side of things, but on the other side, when I was on this hand, the only thing that the CFO or the CEO wanted to hear, why was sponsorship a better investment than doing other things like advertising or discount on cars or any other element that's available in the marketing mix. So that's the one part which I hope I can contribute on this side. What I learned on this side, which I wish I would have known more when I was on the Nissan side, is the access and the ability of the access to content and the creativity that exists in organizations. If you look at the model, and I remember when I was talking with you in Tokyo at the WFA conference, I spoke a lot about the role of agencies and the integration of the need to integrate between your agency and yourself as a client. And I'm now learning from the other side actually the same. I wish I would have integrated much more as a sponsor with the property that I sponsored. So let's say, well, it's Manchester City, but even with UEFA on the Champions League, because the closer you are, the more you're connected, the more creative you can be. And on this side, the content that we create, that some of our people create, is amazing, and they're very close to the club, so they really understand it. But they also have access to players or access to Pep, or so they can create really great content, and up to the level of what I would call full commercials that you would produce as a when I was at Nissan as a CMO. We used to produce commercials costing a lot of money, taking quite a long period of time. I now see that type of content being created here very fast, very quick, at a fraction of the cost of what I used to pay when I was on the other side. So you learn, and I think that's also the beauty of having a career and being able to do many things in many places. What has not changed, and actually has been stronger, and I'm not saying this because I'm now on this side, but the value of sponsorship for me is I'm now even more convinced in it than I was before, and not so much because quite often people talk about awareness or spontaneous name recognition or those things. It's not so much that, but it gives you such an ability to create a more meaningful, deep connection between the brand and your consumer. Because if your brand has the same values and the same ideas as, in this case, let's talk Man City or any of our other clubs, then because sports and football is such an emotive product, and it is so close to people, it is very, very close to who people are. In many countries, people will say, well, I belong to this club, or I am from this club. I mean, it's a very, very deep connection. So if as a brand, you can be part of that, you can be part of the world of these fans and therefore your customers, I think you can create a very deep connection, and there's real impact on what your brand stands for. And then the other part, and then I'll stop with this answer, but because of all the social media and the digitization of everything, the type of content we can now create is far more meaningful. We issue so much content every day on so many platforms, so that people can really truly engage with us, and therefore with the brands that partner with us.
Just to build off that, Roel, I mean, I think I've always been fascinated by the emotional bond created through sponsorship. And actually, one of the things it was difficult to demonstrate through metrics was exactly that. I mean, how have you found ways to do that? Because I often had to resort to the straightforward passion of, I totally believe in this, this is the right thing to do, and you'd be crossing your fingers metaphorically going, hoping to do that. But I found many of the property owners unable to deliver the necessary metrics and unable to understand how important that kind of thing is.
Yeah, I think on that side, so first of all, you're right. It's always to prove a emotional connection is easier. So quite often people look at how many fans all over the world and how many eyeballs will see the product, which still I don't necessarily agree with, but it's still a very important metric that everybody uses, the pure size of your audience. We have one advantage, I think, with data now and the engagement between fans and us. I think we are getting better. So because we create a lot of content, we do a lot of bespoke content for our partners. So deep integration of our partners, and it can be sometimes actually very simple, brought to you by this brand or brought to you by that brand, or much deeper, like Pep Guardiola drives a Nissan Ariya, or some of our players are passionate about water, and we have a brand Xylem, and they do a piece of content around their passion for the environment and for water. Or we have partners around tourism, Abu Dhabi tourism, and they will have our players in some of, or visiting some of their places and show that. So because we create bespoke content and deep content, we can measure the true engagement around how many people are actually watching the content, or how long are they watching this content, and then we do survey their views and their opinions on it. But more and more it's around the data in terms of engagement, and our biggest metrics always is in this side, and I, by the way, at the same in this side, we don't focus too much on number of. We know we need it because it's still part of it, but not so much a number of followers or number of this, but a lot on engagement. How deep is the engagement, and how many of fans engage at what type of level? And then we measure that on non-branded content and branded content, and that's what we will use for our partners.
And what about the rise of the women's game? I mean, you'll have seen, I'm going to go with the word hysteria around England winning the Euros in the women's game, something we failed to do in the men for a while. But looking at the role that City Group has in that as well, I think you're doing some great things there as well. Can you talk about women's football and growth around the world? Yeah,
women's football is on the rise. I of course, in the UK now it was really big because of the win. But I remember when the previous tournament was in the Netherlands and the Dutch team did very well. We had in Holland full stadiums everywhere. You can look at the transfer market. The biggest transfers of players, women players, happened this last window. So whichever angle you look at, the women's game is on the rise, and that is that for me is very exciting. I mean, why would the women's game have to be so far behind? If you look in tennis is a good example. I think that they've done an amazing job. But what we need to do, and that's what we do, we need to keep making the game better and better. I think the audience is there. I think people are very passionate about it. They're excited about it. They want to see women's football. But in every sport, you need to start at the foundation and grow it. So we need to invest in young players. We need to invest in the team, in facilities. I think we need to partner, and we're doing this now in many countries, but in the UK now, but even at European level, there's a lot of discussion. How can some of the money that's generated by football be utilized to invest in grassroots, to invest in the building of the women's game? So I think we've reached a turning point in the last, let's say, 3 to 4 years. The women's game is going up. Audience numbers go up every year. They go up. We have now more and more partners that want to be part of the women's team, especially, whereas quite often in the past, the discussion was to become partner of the men's team, whichever club where we are. And then, okay, it would also be of value to us to have the women's team as part of the portfolio. Now more and more we have partners that want to be part of the women's team, and that is a very focused, dedicated discussion around the women's team. So I think it's turning point is reached. It is growing. I believe it will keep on growing. For the growth to continue, I think it's important we invest. We invest as clubs, but also at the association levels, whether it is in the UK or at Europe level or in any other country, they need to keep on investing. Broadcasters need to, and they do. Quite a few broadcasters are putting the game, more and more games on air at good times, which means that more people get exposed to the product. So it's going to take, well, I won't say it's going to take some time. What I think is the turning point has been reached. Growth will now happen, and the growth will go faster and faster the more we, as call it the football pyramid, invest in the game. The fans are keen, and the nice thing about these fans is that a lot of them are younger families that are very passionate about it. Lots of course, female fans. So the audience group is very big, and it's relatively new to football. So yeah, I'm a big believer in the opportunity.
And what about we've talked about community. Can we touch on culture? Because you've got some real celebrity fans. In fact, when I sat watching Man City win the league, behind me was Noel Gallagher and Johnny Marr. I, of course, got the picture. So you've got the Manchester music scene. Our ex-chairman, or the chairman of the NatWest Group, ex-chairman I work with, Sir Howard Davis, never misses a chance to tell anybody he's a Man City fan, most usually when he's being interviewed by Nick Robinson, of course, Man United fan. Do you leverage the celebrity fan base, and how important is that to you?
Yeah, we do, but more if they want to. I don't think we would necessarily talk about. First of all, we never talk about who's in the stadium and actively use that if they don't want to. But if you take Noel Gallagher, for example, he's very happy to be a passionate, excited fan and be in the change room and sing together with our players, and of course that content will go everywhere, and we will use that. But we would not do this if that passion or excitement doesn't come from them. What is a big part of our business is the celebrity value of it, and that is people follow us and are fans, like you mentioned, but also players, ex-players. We use many of our legends all the time. When we go, for example, now we have a trophy tour, which where we take the trophy, the Premier League one that we've won, and we take it all over the world. And now, of course, our current players can't do that because they're rather busy. But we use our legends, so we try to stay very close to our legends. And also, this is important to culture and DNA. I think these legends, these players have made this club, and I really enjoy the way this company, the company I work for, goes about the legends and the heroes of the past, and whether that is a player like Colin Bell, who unfortunately passed away last year, or Mike Summerby, who still, I was with him in Copenhagen this week when we played the game. He comes to all of our games, and he's always there with us, and so we stay close to our legends, but also we stay close to our fans and our followers. And if they want to talk about the fact that they're City fans, we'll give them the platform. We'll invite them to all the right places in the stadium. We will make them part of everything that we do, but it's on their initiative.
Fantastic. And perhaps to end, a couple of other questions, if I could. One is, let me continue with the theme of culture. It must be fascinating to move from Tokyo to Manchester. Can you compare and contrast a little bit? I mean, food might be an interesting place to start. I'm sure there are many.
Yeah, it's different. I must be honest, I absolutely love Tokyo. It's living in Japan, for anyone listening to this who would ever have a chance to do so, I highly recommend it. It's a fascinating place, and it's a really great country to live in. Tokyo, of course, also being a wonderful city. Very different to Manchester. Tokyo is a very established, very large city. Between Tokyo and Yokohama, so Tokyo Bay, 30 million people, highly sophisticated and established. Manchester, very much smaller, still a big city, but much smaller. But the nice thing about Manchester, which I found fascinating, it is fast growing. It's a fast growing city, it's a young city, many students in Manchester, a lot of development going on everywhere. So from an energy point of view, they're different. I mean, Tokyo is buzzing and big and it's got lots of energy, but so does Manchester. I really enjoy the Manchester scene. It is also because it's very young and because it's a very big university life. There is a very innovative, forward-looking young culture, which is nice, rooted in a industrial, traditional city, and that contrast is quite nice. And for those of you that have a chance to go to Manchester, I would definitely to come and watch one of our games. But even the city itself, I think it's a very, very interesting city. But what I enjoy most is people, people that you work with, people that you engage with, and that I enjoyed in Tokyo. But I lived in Johannesburg. I enjoyed it there, and now in Manchester, but also the Netherlands. I think when you have a chance to work with passionate people with lots of energy, then every place can be pretty amazing. But city-wise, although completely different, but I think Manchester is as exciting as Tokyo is, although in a very different way.
Fantastic. You heard it here first. Manchester is exciting as Tokyo. I'd agree with that. No, it is a great city and well worth a visit for anybody. And there's nothing quite like a derby and the passion of a derby for people to really see the power of football. Obviously, recently you had the great joy of absolutely kippering Man United, I believe. Yeah, that's another English word for you there, Roel. And then just to end, perhaps asking for, what you would advise CMOs. A couple of things here. One is, what do you think's at the top of their inbox at the moment, and what advice would you give them to do their job better? I'm not suggesting that you're not doing a great job, everybody, but what would you say, Roel?
Well, for me, it's still the main, and I always said this, and I truly believe in it. Stay passionate, stay excited, and have a real love for your customer, or in my case now, your supporter or your fan. If that's real, and that's you have a genuine belief in the fact that you can do something meaningful to them, or you sell a product that could be meaningful to them. If you really truly believe that, and you have a passion for what the customer, the fan is all about, and then you do this with excitement and high levels of energy, then you're going to be successful. I really believe in that. So that would be my only advice. And the other reason to approach the job this way is because it's a heck of a lot more fun spending 40, 50, 60, whatever number of hours everybody spends on the job. But it's a lot more fun doing that for so many hours in the week if you are truly passionate about it. So that would be my main advice. And then there's many management books that will write all the other types of advice around how to position and how to market and how to sell. But I'm pretty sure all of us know most of that. But to me, the biggest differentiator is energy and passion.
Right, listen, I think that's fantastic advice. I couldn't agree with you more. Great marketing is always about passionate people, and to use that Anglicism, it's much better to be a radiator than a drain. And Roel, you're absolutely a phenomenal radiator for marketing. Great to see you again. Thanks so much for taking the time, and we have our collective fingers crossed for all of you. Time for the Champions League to be lifted, I think. So with that, thank you so much.
Thank you, David. I really enjoyed it.
Likewise.
Thank you again. Appreciate it.
Yeah, we'll stay in touch. Take the best of care. Thanks. I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. Fantastic conversation. And that last piece of advice is absolutely priceless. I'm looking forward to our next conversation, where I'm sure we're going to get some equally priceless advice from the wonderful Amanda Wu, the CEO of AirAsia. So see you again for episode 22. Take care meanwhile.